So one of the solutions to winner takes all politics and the quest to promote inclusivity in governance is for the nation to have a national development planning process that includes views and inputs from all across the political divide in a manner that makes people who may have lost election believe or feel that they are, even though they may have lost elections, they will be part of decision-making process. So having a national development plan, a truly national development plan that is formulated from a bipartisan approach is one solution to winner takes all politics. Its absence or the lack of it is a manifestation of winner takes all politics. One of the challenges of many developing countries, particularly in Africa, and for that matter, if you like, in Ghana, is that we continue to be plagued with the problem of policy discontinuities. Every policy or program that is initiated by a government runs during the term of office of that government, but when the term of office of that government expires, the new regime would not want to continue that program or policy, regardless of its importance. So, if you like, the first time we had a youth policy, a national youth policy document, was in 1999, prepared by E.T. Mensah. The E.T. Mensah, then of the government of the National Democratic Congress, he was a sports minister, and that document, the 1999 youth policy, was abandoned when the New Patriotic Party won elections in the 2000 elections. And so they abandoned it, threw it away, and spent 8 years to fashion out a new national youth policy. So we had a 2008 national youth policy. Then following the exit of the MPP government in the 2008 election, the NDC that took over prepared another national youth policy in 2010. And in 2016, the NDC lost. And then there's in fact, there's a new national youth policy. And so there can be no meaningful discussion of development when a nation is always starting anew in terms of its policies. There should be some continuity. And so one manifestation of winner takes all politics is the fact that we do not have an inclusive decision-making process that will culminate in a development of a national plan that will be binding on all regimes. So the argument I am making here is that to be able to feel included, to be able to feel that we have reduced the practice of winner takes all politics, why don't we have a national agenda, a national development plan? Now, this plan will be formulated by the experts and elites who have the technical know-how drawn from all across the political divide, so that there will be reps, the elites and the technocrats from all the parties, even though they may not be in government, because you want them to feel part of the decision-making process. You involve them in formulating a national plan. And once that plan is formulated, we can also decide to entrench it. And once it is entrenched, then it becomes binding on all successor regimes. So you may not be in government today, but because you also played a role in formulating that national plan, you do not have much qualms and problems implementing it, because you played a key role in preparing it. In that case, or when this is done, the challenge of policy discontinuity that plagues our development will be gone. And then also, when it is done, the challenge of winner takes all politics that excludes some other people from the governance and decision-making process will be reduced, because you are going to be guided by the national plan in the policies that you make and in the governance that you effect. And if all others across the political divide feel that the project you are implementing was a project they all can own, or they all participated in drafting, then they will be supportive in its implementation. And at the end of the day, the divisive nature of winner takes all politics that polarizes us would be reduced. And like I said earlier, we would also be able to ensure that we have continuity in our developmental process. The 1992 Constitution itself, sometimes I've always argued, even though has served us well, it nevertheless contains provisions that hinder the maturation of our democratization process. I say so because it has certain provisions that require that governments of the day always start anew. So I think within 2 years of the administration of a new government, you are supposed to present before Parliament a set of coherent development policy framework for approval and all that. I mean, if we allow some of these things to go on, then what happens is that always we'll be encouraging regimes to be starting anew. We'll be encouraging regimes to be starting anew. And like I said, there can be no meaningful talk about national development if we always want to start implementing, we are always starting anew in introducing and implementing new policies. There should be the continuity. The directive principles of state policy, Chapter 6 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution, enjoins successor regimes to as much as possible implement or continue laudable programs and projects that have been introduced or were implemented by predecessor government. And unfortunately, because people have argued that the directive principles of state policy is not justiciable, I know I'm told there's been some judgment about this, but generally people believe that the directive principles of state policy, the Chapter 6 of our Constitution, they contain provisions that are not justiciable, and so regimes find it difficult easy to jettison projects that have been introduced by successor government, and they introduce their own anew in a manner that makes us always start anew in our journey towards development. And I'm saying this is one manifestation of winner takes all politics. It is not compulsory, it is not necessary that every successor government would have to abandon policy that has been initiated by its predecessors. If it is good, why not? If it's not good, it can be improved and strengthened so that we continue. But in our education, at one point in time, a regime said, let's do senior high school for 3 years. Another came, said 4 years. Another came, they said 3 years. In that kind of partisan politics ping pong that jeopardizes the interest and future of our younger ones. I think these things are not helpful. And so one solution, one manifestation of winner takes all politics is the fact that the one who wins election also takes over the entire spectrum of decision-making process in a manner that alienates all others across the political divide and in civil society, away from the decision-making process. To solve that problem, I'm advocating for a certain national plan that will be entrenched and whose inputs will be filled by the elites and the experts of all political parties, across the divide, so that at the end of the day, they would also own such national plans. One challenge of our development planning and implementation of development policy framework has got to do with the fact that some of these policy frameworks and projects implemented are not owned by the people that it is directed at. And so if there is that kind of ownership across the political divide, then continuing a particular project, even when a previous regime has been ousted through election, will not be difficult for by a successor government. But if this does not happen, and always leaders elected will formulate their own decision without reaching across their political divide, going beyond their party to solicit ideas from all others, then their plans and policies would not outlive their regime, and then would always be starting anew, and will keep perpetuating the practice of winner takes all politics. I would end here on this note and then continue with another manifestation of winner takes all politics in the next lecture. Thank you.